Intro: The hidden language of oral intimacy. Approx. 1,300 words, first part of your 15,000 plus word script. Have you ever noticed how some of the most intimate moments between two people are never discussed out loud? The room is quiet, the air feels different, and there's a kind of electricity in the silence. Your heart rate changes, your breathing shifts, and yet no words are spoken. Oral intimacy is one of those acts. It's more than a physical gesture. It's a conversation without words, a language written in glances, touches, and the courage to be vulnerable. But here's what most people never realize: what you think you know about it. Be completely wrong. For centuries, cultures have wrapped oral sex in layers of secrecy, taboos, myths, and whispered rumors. Some call it an act of passion. Others treat it like something forbidden. And yet, human behavior tells a much deeper story in this video. We're pulling back the curtain, not with cheap shock value, but with truths backed by psychology, human nature, and the science of intimacy. We'll explore how oral sex connects to trust, dominance, emotional closeness, cultural influence, brain chemistry, performance anxiety, and even how society has tricked us into misunderstanding it. Some of these facts will make you curious. Some will make you rethink everything you thought you knew. And some might make you uncomfortable, but if you stay until the end, you'll see how these 10 points form a hidden map, a pattern that explains not just oral intimacy, but the deeper emotional and psychological forces that drive human attraction itself. Because here's the truth. This isn't just about the act. It's about what it represents, who we trust, how we love, and what we secretly fear. Let's begin. Point 1. It's not just about pleasure. Imagine this. Two people have been together for years. They know each other's routines, finish each other's sentences, and share 100 inside jokes. But lately something feels off. They're affectionate, yes, but the spark feels muted. One night, without planning, without overthinking, one of them decides to focus entirely on giving. No rushing, no distractions, just complete attention to the other person's experience. And something changes. Not just physically, emotionally. Psychologists have studied this exact phenomenon, and what they've found is fascinating. Acts of giving, especially in intimate contexts, trigger bonding responses in the brain. When someone engages in oral intimacy, particularly when the focus is entirely on their partner's pleasure, the brain releases oxytocin, often called the love hormone. Oxytocin isn't just about romantic attachment. It's a chemical signal to your nervous system that says, this person is safe, this person is close to me, this person is worth trusting. That's why in many long-term relationships, these moments can reignite emotional connection in a way that even penetrative sex sometimes can't. It's not about reaching an endpoint. It's about sending a message. I'm here for you. You too feel wanted. I want you to know you matter. But here's where the psychology gets more complex. While many think of oral intimacy as a bonus or a add-on to other sexual activity, some relationship experts argue that in certain contexts, it's actually more intimate than penetrative sex because it requires a different kind of vulnerability. Think about it. You're physically close in a way that requires trust. You're reading subtle cues in real time, body language, breathing, patterns, microexpressions. It's a form of nonverbal conversation where your ability to tune in determines the experience. And here's the twist. In some relationships, that emotional depth is what makes it scarier than traditional intimacy. For someone with trust issues or someone afraid of emotional closeness, this act can feel like opening a locked door they've kept shut for years. So, while on the surface, it's just another form of physical connection. Beneath it lies a psychological transaction. I'll let you in closer than anyone else. If you prove you can handle that closeness, and if you've ever wondered why some people resist it, even in otherwise passionate relationships, that's part of the reason. Sometimes it's not about physical preference, it's about emotional readiness. Point to cultural attitudes, shape desire. Approximately 1,500 plus words. Picture two different scenes. Scene 1. A couple in Paris is sitting at a candlelit table in a small cafe. Their conversation is open, playful, even a little teasing. The topic drifts into intimacy, and there's no awkwardness. They talk about preferences, past experiences, and yes, oral sex as casually as they might talk about a favorite. Wine. Scene 2. Thousands of miles away, in a small rural town, another couple sits in their kitchen after dinner. The thought of discussing oral intimacy out loud makes them both uncomfortable. They care about each other deeply, but they've been shaped by a world where certain acts are whispered about in shame, never spoken of in daylight. Two very different realities, same human biology, completely different cultural scripts. The cultural lens on desire. Psychologists and anthropologists agree on this. Culture doesn't just influence our values, it shapes our physical desires. In societies where open discussion of sex is normalized, people are more likely to see oral intimacy as a natural part of a relationship. It's framed as an act of mutual pleasure, exploration, and emotional closeness. In more conservative cultures, the same act may carry connotations of moral impurity, submissiveness, or even danger. This isn't just about what's allowed. It's about how our brains are trained to respond. If you grow up hearing something is wrong, dirty, or shameful, your nervous system wires itself to respond with tension, not relaxation when it comes up. That tension is a direct barrier to arousal. Case study. The cultural switch. Consider the story of Amira. She grew up in a conservative household where any talk about sex was avoided, and intimacy was portrayed as something functional, not emotional, not playful, not exploratory in her early relationships. She avoided certain acts entirely, not because she didn't feel curiosity, but because every instinct told her it was not what good people do. Years later, Amira moved abroad for work. She met someone who treated intimacy as an art form, something to be talked about openly, explored slowly, experienced without judgment. The shift was gradual. The first time she engaged in oral intimacy, she expected to feel shame instead. She felt connection. Her internal narrative began to rewrite itself. The brain's cultural wiring, neuroscience, backs this up. The brain's pleasure centers, the areas that release dopamine and oxytocin, are heavily influenced by context. If your cultural context frames something as forbidden, your brain may suppress the pleasure response to protect you from perceived social harm. If your context frames it as an act of love or celebration, your brain amplifies the pleasure. This is why the same act can feel deeply fulfilling for one person and deeply uncomfortable for another, even if their physical sensations are identical. The invisible pressure here is where human behavior gets even more complicated. When partners come from different cultural backgrounds, they often bring unspoken expectations into the bedroom. One might see oral intimacy as essential to closeness. The other might see it as unnecessary or even degrading. This mismatch can quietly erode trust and connection over time, if never addressed. And yet, few couples talk about it openly. Why? Because talking about it means revealing your sexual origin, story, the culture, the norms, the rules you grew up with, and for many people, that feels far more vulnerable than the act itself. The global double standard social media has made this even more interesting, more complicated. We now live in a world where certain regions publicly reject open sexuality but consume sexualized content at higher rates online. It's a paradox that reveals a simple truth. Desire exists everywhere, but culture determines how, when, and if it's expressed. The suspense thread. Now here's the part most people don't realize. Cultural influence doesn't just affect whether someone wants oral intimacy, it can actually alter how much pleasure their brain is capable of feeling during it. In other words, the same act, done the same way, can feel twice as pleasurable too. Someone who has been culturally conditioned to see it positively, and half as pleasurable or even uncomfortable to someone taught to see it as shameful. And in the next section, we're going to talk about the one thing that overrides cultural programming completely. Brain chemistry. Point 3. Brain chemistry gets a boost approximately 1,500 words. There's a moment during oral intimacy where the rest of the world seems to fade away. Your thoughts slow. Your focus narrows. Your body feels like it's in a different rhythm than it was just seconds ago. This isn't just romance or passion. It's neurochemistry in action. The chemical cocktail when you engage in oral intimacy. Your brain releases a very specific mix of chemicals. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which strengthens trust and emotional closeness. Dopamine, the pleasure chemical, heightens feelings of reward and satisfaction. Endorphins, natural painkillers that produce a light, euphoric sensation. Serotonin, which stabilizes mood and deepens feelings of safety. Together, these create an emotional high that doesn't just make you feel good in the moment. It can literally reinforce attachment to the person you're with. The deep connection effect researchers have found that during oral intimacy, oxytocin levels spike in both partners, not just the receiver, but the giver as well. This means the act itself becomes a kind of neural handshake, a biological way of saying, we're on the same team, we're in this